Wow, that is a lot.
Yeah, and it really clicked that that hit some sort of momentum that I could continue to ride off of. And John Maxwell talks about the law of the big mo, and there's object in motion stays in motion unless acted upon by an opposing force. So he talks about once you can get in motion, it's much easier to keep going. And so after the conference in 2021, my mentor says, Brandon, you're ready to start teaching a speaker school.
These things up, or does it just come to you in a flash?
Sitting on the front porch with family or friends brings a cherished sense of comfort and connection, where the simple joys of music and conversation blend into moments of shared wisdom and growth. It's a space where life's lessons are exchanged freely, and every interaction is meaningful. Today, whether you're in a digital cafe, a Zoom meeting, or at an in-person event or social gathering, that's your front porch. At Wisdom on the Front Porch, we capture this spirit in our podcast and magazine, both digital and print, offering you the insights, tools, and support to excel and thrive in your business and personal life. Let's join in to today's podcast.
Welcome to Wisdom on the Front Porch. We're here with Brandon. Brandon, say your last name for me. I know I'm going to mess it up.
Oh, there you go. Gaydorus.
Gaydorus. All right, Brandon Gaydorus. Thank you for being here. So tell our audience a little bit about who you are and what you do and why you do it.
Absolutely. I think it's always interesting when you try and figure out what was the point in your life where you figured out what it is that you wanted to do. And
Yeah.
and I look back at the younger generation or even someone who's trying to figure out their career and they're just not happy. And I'm like, you know what? I think it's one of the coolest things when you don't know what it is that you want because you can focus on trying to figure that out. And when I was younger, I would just find something that I was interested in and I would try and get really good at it.
Oh, that's great, though.
Yeah, because I didn't know what I know now, but I just would find something and I would try and get really good at it. And I realized that that is one of the best things that you can do in life is try and find something that it gets you excited, that you like doing, and then just try and get better. And for me, it was golf in the beginning. I liked playing golf. I was good at it. I wasn't great, but I just would put in so much work to practice and try and get better. And then I would watch the pros and I'd try and see what they were doing that I wasn't doing. And it got to the point where I stopped getting much better and I was trying to figure out why. And I realized that I was practicing, but I wasn't necessarily practicing the right stuff.
Oh, well, that's
And
true. Yeah.
yeah. And so as I got older into college, I found an interest in fitness and specifically the fitness side for golfers. And this guy came to our college and he talked about how he wanted to be the best in the world at what he did. He was a guest speaker at an afternoon and he said he wanted to be the best at what he did. And I'm sitting there at 20 years old. I didn't want to be in there, but this guy caught my attention. I was engraved to the entire presentation because he said, because he wanted to be the best in the world at what he did, he wrote down the top 10 people in the world who were the best at that.
Oh, wow.
And then he learned, observed, shadowed, studied, and met all 10 of those people.
Oh,
Yeah. And
oh,
he
that's
and
amazing.
yeah, and he ended up having a lot of success in his career. He was in his mid 60s when he was giving this presentation. And I was like, why am I overcomplicating school? Why am I overcomplicating this process of school? Why don't I just continue to get good enough grades? And then why don't I focus on learning from the top 10 people who have what I want? Because I realized when I played golf, I didn't do that. I just would try and practice. And I thought if I practice, I would get better. And then I was like, you know what? I'm interested in the fitness side of golf. Why don't I write down the top 10 people at that? And so I wrote down my top 10 people and I was like, let me start learning from these people. Let me start reaching out to them. And 3 weeks later, I found myself on the phone with the number 3 guy on my list.
Wow. So only in 3 weeks, it's just that little change of perspective, you know. This why we have mentors and coaches, you know. They're
100,
good
100%.
example. Yeah.
And he told me everything that I needed to do to be successful in that field. And 6 years later, I got voted top 50 in America at what I did. And I was on the same list as him. And I'm sharing that with you to say the only
Wow.
reason that happened was because I just listened to the person who had what it is that I wanted.
Wow, you've already hit us with so much wisdom. I can't believe how much was packed in that little beginning right there. It's like finding a mentor, hearing somebody who's giving you instructions on what to do, and you followed them. And in 3 weeks, you're already making a difference. And then what was it, 6 years? You said you were in that top 10 of the people you were with. That is incredible. That's encouraging. And it's like, have a new plan. You know? But
Yeah.
that's great because yeah, you know, I love the example of sitting on a park bench. You sit in the middle of the bench, which is what I would do normally anyways, but you have people on one side of you who aren't as far as long as you are, but you have other people who are sitting on the bench with you who are much further along. And it's like, or even if you have two separate park benches, you can still go back and forth between the park benches. You don't have to just stick with one. And I love that you listen to somebody who was on the park bench with you who's further ahead than you. And now here you are helping the ones that aren't as far as you on the park bench. We're just gaining more and getting more. And I love what you just shared. That was so insightful. What a simple thing to do, but you wouldn't know to do it. Um, and and I love the warm heart life behind you. You've got to tell the people the story about how you came up with that name.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was reflecting back on the process to learning from all those very successful people that I looked up to, because at that point I had learned, worked under, met, shadowed, studied many of those people that I looked up to that I wrote down years prior. And I just was reflecting back on the journey, and I felt alone. I felt not fulfilled.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and I was like, man, if I'm gonna work this hard for something, whether it's continue to do this or something else, I'm going to take a lot of time to think about that next mountain that I climb, what I want it to look like. And I said, you know what? I
Good,
don't
good.
necessarily know what it will be, but I know the next mountain I climb is probably going to take another 10 years. um, because that mountain, I climbed that for probably about 12 years. And I was like, what do I want that to look like? At that point, I had probably been working in that field for 9 years. And
Oh, wow.
ever since I was 17, I was engraved in that. And then from 20 to 26, things really accelerated. And then I stayed in that field for another 3 years. But in that 3 year stretch, I took a lot of time to think about that mountain. And I said, the next mountain I want to climb it with a massive group of people. And I want to climb it with people together. And so
Wow.
yeah, so I took a lot of time to think, and one day I was sitting at the beach and I said, what does everybody need? And I said, everybody needs a warm heart. So I drew a heart in the sand that day and and I started Warm Heart.
Wow.
I didn't have a product or service, but I knew if I studied the most successful businesses, going back to the top 10 rule, I knew if I studied the most successful businesses, I could figure out how to create a business that everybody needed. So what did I study? I studied Amazon, Starbucks, Pandora Jewelers, Walmart, and I studied their core values. So I kept it really simple. It's not like I read these necessarily big books. I read books, I listened to books, but what I mostly did was I Googled their core values. And so based on their values, I came up with the Warm Heart Life core values, which spell one word, which is care. Create opportunities for yourself and others, active lifestyle, live that 3 words in action. Respect is earned, not just given, and then excel forward to get what it is that you want in life. So those were the core values. And then I had 3 sub-core values under each one of those 4. And then I would just say those core values almost every day for about, it was a page long of core values. And I would say those almost every day for a year. And eventually I started becoming that warm heart. And then
Wow.
eventually I started to create my first product, which was a book. And I just called it the Care Principle. So I took that 1 page of core values and then I wrote a whole book on it. And so towards the end of 2019, when I was finishing the book, I committed to having my first event. I thought I was actually going to mentor up and coming musicians. So I thought I was going to be in the music side and of the mentorship process. And I had my first event. It was called a musician showcase night. And that went good. I was getting ready to do my second one. And I went in to get the papers. That same week, I got in the papers, the contract for the next one. There was news about this virus going around. So I just never handed in the contract. And, you know, that week things hit the fan and I was like, well, looks like I'm not going to have a in-person event. So I was on the phone with my mentor and I said, well, what do I do? He said, Brandon, it looks like you can't go out to the bar and pick up girls anymore. I said, oh, okay. You're right. And I needed to hear that because it was just a joke that loosened up the mood, that opened up my mind to what he actually wanted me to hear after that. But
Yeah.
if you remember during that time period, everyone was in such panic mode. So to hear a joke like that really loosened me up to probably the best advice I've ever gotten in my life, which was, he said, Brandon, I don't know if the world's going to end next week or if everything's going to be okay next week. But I can tell you one thing, when there's problems, when there's issues, when people are panicking, there's opportunities. And he said, if you can be there for your people, you're going to figure out a way to make it through this on the right side.
Wow.
And I said, okay, how can I be there for my people? And my fitness business was still my main business supporting me. And Warm Heart Life was my side hustle. It was my dream business, my bucket list business that I was going on about 1.5 years of that. And most of what I was doing at Warm Heart Life at this point was I was posting videos. I was doing 4 posts a week and most of them were videos. So I was getting a lot of practice spreading personal development messages, but still no way people couldn't even pronounce Warm Heart Life. Yeah, easiest names to pronounce, but people were just like, what the heck is that?
Yeah.
And I got it. You know, I could understand that. So I said, you know what can I do to be there for my people? And I said, I did 9 internships. I understand internships very well. All of these high school and college students are probably getting dropped from their internships unless somehow they can do them virtually. So let me mentor high school and college students, do it through Zoom. And the main thing I'm going to teach them is how to get their dream internship.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. I love that. And I love that you have a mentor that you kept working with. So important for us to do that, to have someone, because that way we can bounce ideas off. And when we're in our head and we can't figure out what's going on, like you said, he just came up with a joke, and it was just enough to get you to think, okay, let's think outside the box. Um, gosh, I think the thing I like the most about what you said right now is that you took it upon yourself to do what you were thinking that you need to tell other people to do. So you experienced it yourself first. You found out what worked, what didn't work, and went on with that. And so many times we hear stuff from people and we just kind of regurgitate it without taking it upon ourselves and seeing if it really does work for us. Because somebody may be doing fantastic with something and we go to try it and it's not really for us to work that way. So what makes us wonderful and unique helps us to be able to take the same thing, but put our own self into it. And we go on. So you've done this. You obviously got through COVID fine. So what's going on now? Are you still doing everything on Zoom, or do you have in-person events?
Yeah, it's a great question there. So what happened was I ended up mentoring these high school and college students for almost 2 years, because in 2019, when I had my musician showcase night, I had 4 interns and I was basically just mentoring them for the 8 weeks. So I kind of just took that program and started doing it through Zoom, but just being upfront, hey, this is just a mentorship internship program. And the main thing I'm teaching you is just how to get your dream internship. So I ended up doing that till about either the summer or the fall of 2021. And so almost 2 years of doing that, I turned that into a book called Skip College, Read This. And then after Skip College, Read This got released, I was like, you know what? I'm so sick of waiting to get on stages. I'm just going to create a stage. And
Oh,
I had been public speaking a lot before the pandemic, but when the pandemic hit, obviously things changed. But I had actually started public speaking more than I had ever been once the pandemic hit, because I'm on these calls talking to these high school, college students for basically 2 hours each week when the programs were going on, because I would do it 2 days a week. And so I was getting a ton of repetition, not only speaking, but also teaching. And so I said, you know what? Ain't no one going to give me an opportunity to speak right now in person. I know virtual, there was lots of that going on, but I said, I
right.
want to speak in person. I had seen this TED Talk by Susan Pinker, and she talked about the number one key to longevity was not what most people think. It wasn't whether you smoke or drink. It wasn't whether you were overweight or not. It wasn't the air quality. It wasn't genetics. She said the number one key to longevity is social integration, and a close second, close relationships. So I said, you know what?
Wow.
I'm going to go after those two. I understand what was going on in 2021. And it was just kind of like just back and forth. Some months it was good. Some months it was like, we're back. It was just like, and I was just like, I'm sick of this. I get it. No matter what anyone was going through at that time, I understand. Like, I get it. Me personally, I made a decision that I was going to focus on those two things: close relationships and social integration, because I felt better when I was around people. I felt like I was breathing better. I felt like I was more excited. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to go out of my way and I'm going to have a personal development conference. And nobody in the Northeast seemed like they were having an in-person conference at that time, which is where, again, I saw an opportunity. So I had this event on October 2nd, 2021. I think we sold 72 tickets. We had 57 people there,
Wow.
and my goal was 100. And so you may seem like, oh, you didn't hit your goal, but what happened was I did something that nobody was doing, and that created an opportunity to get like-minded people in that room, and it really didn't
Yeah.
matter how many. And that core group of 50, 60 people turned into some of my best friends, and many of them I didn't know, and many of them I did know. And that day led to a rocket ship of things that happened after that. I counted my speaking engagements from December 2022 to October 2nd, 2021, when I had my event. So about 14-month stretch. I was like, man, I've spoken a lot over this last year or so. And I realized I had 40 speaking engagements in between those 14 months.
Wow. That is a lot.
Yeah. And it really clicked that hit some sort of momentum that I could continue to ride off of. And John Maxwell talks about the law of the big mo. And there's, object in motion stays in motion unless acted upon by an opposing force. So he talks about once you can get in motion, it's much easier to keep going. And so after the conference in 2021, my mentor says, Brandon, you're ready to start teaching a speaker school. Because he had taught a speaker school for years. He had spoke around the world for 40, 45 years. And I would invite him as a guest speaker to talk to my mentees during the pandemic. And it was through Zoom, so it was easy for him to do. So he saw what I was doing. And after my conference, he's like, hey, you're really onto something here. And so I had taken his speaker school in 2018. And so I had just continued to practice what he said since then, because I was like, if I don't practice this stuff, it's going to go in one ear and out through the other.
Yeah.
And so I got to the point over that 3.5 years where it was like, wow, like I really know a lot. And there's still a lot I don't know. Like there's still a lot I don't know, but he told me, he's like, you're ready to start teaching one of these. So after 2 months of thinking he was crazy, I had decided to call the best speaker I knew in the area. His name was Carl Michelle. And I said, hey, Carl, do you want to teach a speaker school with me? We could do a 1 hour a week for 4 weeks and we can try and get 10 people. And he said, sure, we could do it at my place. So 10 days later, we had 10 people and we took them through a 4-week program. I didn't think anything of it except for this was a good challenge. After the 4 weeks, people were saying, when's the next one? And so I was like, okay, I guess we'll do another one. And so we did the next one we did after my second conference, and then we did a in-person version one day and then a virtual version another day. So now we start working with people kind of all across the United States. And so my next conference happens. We sold like 129 tickets to that. That was in May 2022. And then we did the speaker schools. Then we did more speaker schools after that. Then I got a corporate speaker school. And then we did another one. But I said, you know what? We're going to do a bonus. Anyone who wants to do 2 days after this 4-week program, it's going to be this instead of this, and there'll be an option. And so, because we got to the point where we were so much better teachers, and there was so much that we weren't teaching everybody because we only had a 1 hour week for 4 or 5 weeks. And so what ended up happening is we did our first 2-day mastermind in March of 2023. And then in April of 2023, I had my 3rd year of having a conference. And this one, we sold 238 tickets. And our main speaker was Terry Fader, who was one of the highest paid comedians in the entire country. And I got to interview him. We brought him to the town of Stamford, Connecticut. Then we got to see his show after at the Palace Theater. And after that, I had no speaker schools planned, but we had just did our first 2-day speaker school about a month prior. And so what happened was people kept saying, Brandon, I want to get on your stage. Brandon, when's the next speaker school? So I called Carl. I said, hey, I'm going to do this business full time. I gave up my fitness business. I said, I'm going to do this business full time and I'm going to go around the country teaching these things. Do you want to do this with me? And I was thinking he was going to say yes to like 1 or 2 of these. And he was like, yeah, I'm in for all of them. So we went to Laguna Beach,
Nice.
California. We went to Toronto. We went to Chicago. We did New York City. And that put us on the map. I started getting more one-on-one clients. I started getting way, way better at teaching speaking. And then I started having corporate opportunities come in. And then 2024 came around. We had a year-long public speaking school in a middle school. That was a cool experience. And, taught speaker schools all throughout this year. And, it's been pretty cool. Had another conference, brought some big names to Stamford, Connecticut again. And so that was all exciting. And now we're here. The goal with Warm Heart Life is to have 10,000 student universities across 10 of the best cities in the United States. And I've been pursuing that since the summer of 2021. And so we got about 7.5 more years to go to hit that goal. And I'll see how it goes from there.
Wow. That's just fantastic. I mean, I'm just listening to you as you're just going from one thing to another thing, and just the opportunities opening up. You know, you talked about John Maxwell and some of the things that he's talking about, and it's just amazing to see the progress that you do. I want to ask you something kind of personal. So as you're going through all of this, did you ever just take a pause and it's like, look, look back and it's like, I can't believe I actually got to this place. I mean, I do believe it because I worked to get here, but it's like, look at these steps I took to get here. When I started out, I wouldn't have ever imagined that this is where it would have been. Was that something you did?
100% all the time. You know,
You know?
I look back at it as someone was like, Brandon, what do you attribute your success to? And I just tell them the goal and the vision. I mean,
The goal and the vision.
I in 2018, I said I want to grow together with as many people as possible. It wasn't a specific goal. But by pursuing that for 3 years, the big vision came into my life in July of 2021 to have 10,000 student universities. And after that, that's when I committed to having my first conference. So
Wow.
yeah, so having that big like I have a vision. I have a vision of having the most impactful education system in the entire country, where people say they'd rather go to Warm Heart University over a Harvard, a Yale, a Princeton. I have a vision that instead of the arenas being revolved around sports teams to fill them, on Fridays, the students have one class and it's in the arena. And they come into the arena maybe around 9 a.m., 9:30 a.m. And they come in there, and what they go to see is not a basketball game, not a volleyball game. What they're coming in there to see is some of the people who have grown together with Warm Heart Life along the way, who have developed super inspiring stories, and they come back and they share their stories to the thousands of students in the arena, so the students could learn from people who have achieved something very inspiring in real life. And so I have a vision that that's called Fired Up Fridays. And so that's
I
one
like
thing
that.
that really pushes me to keep doing all this stuff. Like I've done conferences 4 years in a row. It's not the easiest thing to do when you don't have a team of people. What I have is I have a team of warm hearts. I got
There
a
you
lot of
go.
people. Yeah, I got a lot of people who believe in the vision. I got a lot of people who have felt the positive effects from Warm Heart Life that help make those things happen. And yeah, I sit back all the time and I'm just like, wow, I can't believe a lot of the stuff that's happening. It's it's pretty cool. Like I would have never, I dreamed of being able to teach 2-day workshops, but I didn't know they would happen. Now it's like I've taught these all over the country. Yeah. It's like, so
Wow. Wow. That's
yeah.
that's so encouraging and so hopeful. And I love the visions that you gave us of, what is your mountain? What's the mountain you want to conquer? Because then we're focused on what is that one thing. And we're talking about, well, I want to do this, I want to do that. But if I've got to climb this mountain, what is that mountain really? Am I going to climb it with other people like you've done? Is it something I need to climb myself first to learn, to get the education, to do the studying? You know, and and it's like very insightful. Love it. You talk about wisdom, boy, you brought it. You brought it today. Brandon,
Yeah.
thank you so much for being here. I know you've got just a limited time today, so I really appreciate you taking the time and speaking to our audience and letting them know and helping them maybe have visions now of how they can get to where they want to be. Um, and it's good to know that, at first you didn't know where you're going to end up, and look where you are. And it's not that those were distractions or side roads you took, but it was all part of your path, and we don't always know what's on our path till we start
Yeah.
walking it.
Yeah.
That's great. So how do people get a hold of you?
Yeah. So people can get a hold of me My number is 607-348-6136. And then my Instagrams are Brandon Gaydorus or Warm Heart Life. Facebook is Brandon Gaydorus. My name is not a last name that many people have. So you just type in my name and it's pretty easy to find any of my media outlets. And if I could leave everyone with one last thing.
Oh, absolutely.
It's exactly what you said right there. So in the beginning, we talked about how it's okay to not know exactly where it is that you're supposed to be or where you want to go. But the biggest thing is just to start taking action down that path. And if you take one thing away from this today, it's like, for so long, I didn't know exactly where I wanted to go. I would just find things that interested me, and then I would just try and learn how to get good at that. In the beginning, I thought it was just practice. When I was in college, I learned that you could just learn from the most successful people. And then when I had success in that, I learned that I wasn't super fulfilled. So I took another 3 years after that to figure out the vision of Warm Heart Life after I realized I wanted to grow together with a massive amount of people. And I would try different things. I would try having a musician showcase event. I thought it was going to be Warm Heart Fitness and Entertainment in the beginning. I mentored high school and college students. I wrote 2 books in personal development before the vision came. And I would go to conferences, I would go to events, I would network with people, and I would just hear their stories. And the reason 3 years later, I'm just as excited to achieve the vision, if not more excited as I was 3 years ago, is because I took so much time to think about what I wanted. And I didn't put a ton of pressure on figuring that out. I just tried to get around people who figured things out in their life. And sometimes you find people who you think figured it out, and then you realize maybe they don't have it figured it out, or maybe that's not what I do want. And I think that's one of the coolest things that you can do if you don't know what it is that you want, is to explore it. Like, I go through that in my relationship life. I'm not married yet. I'm okay with that. I'm continuing to have conversations. I'm continuing to have to meet people. I'm continuing to go to different parts of the country to explore what is out there. And I'm okay with not being married right now. And the reason I'm okay with that is because I'm exploring, I'm learning. It's not like I'm not taking any action. It's I'm figuring things out. And with my business, I figured that out a little bit quicker than my personal life. And a lot of people figure that out with their personal life before their business. And that's okay. There's no right or wrong. But I think the one thing that we can all do is we can take steps towards figuring that out. And that's what I try and do every day. And now with the business, I'm trying to take steps to try and figure out how to achieve that goal. You know, and with my personal life, I continue to take steps to try and figure out, hey, how can I be the person that can attract the dream person into my life? And I try and take steps each day to be able to do that. So I hope that's the one message that everyone could take away from this podcast. And
thank you for joining us today on Wisdom on the Front Porch with your host, Ellis Kirkpatrick. You can find us on our website, wisdomonthefrontporch.com, see previous episodes of the podcast, and view issues of the magazine. Did you know you can submit questions, leave reviews, or suggest topics? You can also tell us where your favorite front porch location is and what it means to you. We hope you gain value and insight from today's or previous talks. We appreciate your support for us so we can continue to provide value and expertise to you and others. Subscribe to Wisdom on the Front Porch magazine and receive a second year absolutely free. This is a limited time offer available exclusively to those who mention the name of today's podcast. Join in next week when we bring you another great insight into the world of entrepreneur culture and lifestyle. Make today a great day. Always believe that something wonderful is going to happen.